So we created a Human Trafficking Bureau at the Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigation with a special agent in charge of that division and 6 agents who focus on doing this work. Now we're not going to do all the work. What happens is we're working to coordinate better strategies statewide with other local law enforcement agencies. We're doing training. We're providing resources when we can.
I do wholeheartedly support the Attorney General's efforts to raise attention and to educate law enforcement. What I hope is that that educational effort by those 7 agents that are hired is culturally informed, is trauma informed, and involves all of the others of us doing the work on the ground in the community who see all the downstream consequences that could inform law enforcement's response on the front end.
Recently we've been trained to team up with the Cook County Sheriff's Office on the National John Suppression Initiative. Basically, years ago it was seen as, sex trafficking, or not sex trafficking, but prostitution was seen as taboo, and it was the girls that were the issue. So it was ticket the girls, take them to jail, but we saw all that really did was it forced them back out onto the track or the streets or the hotels, because if you gave them a $1,000 ticket, what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to go get more dates to pay for that ticket and or sit in jail for that. So over time we've realized that doesn't really work. So now we've moved on to what we call demand suppression, and that's where the NJSI, which is the National John Suppression Initiative, comes into play. And we're actually targeting the Johns in the sense of if we don't have the buyers of sex trafficking, then we don't necessarily have the problem of sex trafficking.
It's not a matter of just arresting our way out, although there are people we need to arrest. There's also going to have to be the service to the survivors aspect. There's going to have to be the public awareness and prevention campaign. All of those things, law enforcement, treatment, prevention and awareness, all those pieces have to be working together if we're going to solve this. It has to become something that citizens in Wisconsin understand is a scourge, that it's modern day slavery, that this isn't harmless. It's not someone who's doing something out of their own free will to make money.
Kids are being sold for sex, really. Kids are being exploited all throughout this country, and we want to do our part to end child sexual exploitation here in the greater Milwaukee area.
Shifting the perspective to there's a lot more under the surface that we don't ever get to see and we don't talk about, and it's coercion and it's abuse and it's emotional abuse and physical abuse and threats and all of these things, and there's always that element of sexual abuse and sexual violence, and we just don't talk about that. And so now that we're starting to see like, oh, there's a lot more to this, we're kind of identifying these victims and survivors as, okay, let's talk about how you got here. Let's talk about all of those things that you had to go through and all of this trauma that you had to go through. How did you get here?
It's going to take a gentle touch to convince a trafficking victim to work with us, to come to us, to trust us, and to know that we're in this for the long haul with them. And that's all part of the training for law enforcement. And we've worked very hard to try to coordinate the resources statewide, because we know that if we expect a survivor of human trafficking to trust us and to work with us to get them back to safety again and go after the trafficker, we know that this isn't just giving them someplace to go tonight or this weekend or the next week, that this is going to be a relationship that's going to go for 6 months or a year or maybe longer, where we're going to have to get them back to being a productive citizen again. You have to kind of deprogram them. They have been living in fear and under threat and coercion for so long that they can't just snap their fingers and be all fine. And so we have to commit that we're going to be with them for the long haul.
I've watched survivors, and it's a struggle to live every day. They challenge themselves to live another day. And sometimes they can go for many weeks without having to do that. Suddenly something triggers them, and they're questioning whether it's worth living.
really tough parts about my story, even at this age, as old as I am, 37, is still the effects that it had on my family. You know, people who are around me, I think that's another question that people always ask is, how come nobody noticed? If all of this is going on and you're saying that people are around you, how come nobody noticed? Well, they noticed it, but they perceived it differently. Just the way that I noticed it, but I perceived it differently. Trafficking is a legal term. It's not a life term. You know, it's not how life actually happens. I don't know that you ever fully get out of it, particularly when all of these people they're not in jail. I mean, they're roaming the earth freely. They can access me really whenever they want. But I do feel like I have opportunities to, at the very least, even if they do come kill me, like they say they're going to, at least there's people in the community who are listening and who know what's happening. And even if they kill me, at least the truth is real to people.
Whenever I speak, I do an exercise with everybody, and I tell everybody to close their eyes and say, picture a prostitute or a junkie, a crackhead, a crack whore. And then I tell everybody to open their eyes and stand in front of them and say, that image that we have come to embrace, that's me. Sex trafficking and addiction are not just inner city problems. They are suburban problems. You know, our society has become okay with locking away drug dealers and arms dealers, but yet we keep wanting to turn a blind eye to people selling humans over and over, because the reality is, once the drugs are gone, you can't resell them, and you can do that with a human. I want people to be aware, I want people to be educated, I want people to know that this is not an inner city problem. This is an everywhere problem. This is a suburban problem, especially with the heroin epidemic sweeping over our cities and youth starting with prescription painkillers. I want people to start the conversation.
Look for the clothing. Look for, are you in a convenience store and you have a girl and guy together, and the girl is just like walking behind the guy, not talking to anybody, head down, looks scared, looks nervous, and then the guy is making all the decisions of, you know, and yeah, obviously we all know that as a couple, if you go into the gas station or something, the guy's, well, old school is the guy's supposed to pay and whatnot, so we're not saying that, but look at her demeanor. Does she have bruises? Does she have a black eye? Is she walking behind this guy, you know, just not looking at anybody, not paying attention to anybody? And, you know, if you bump into her, if you say hello or something and she just looks down and doesn't talk to you, that's because she doesn't have permission to talk to you. That's how these power and control pimps work, is they don't want you looking at somebody, talking to anybody.
You can look for the girl who is walking in the mall with her friends, maybe a couple steps back from everybody, keeping her head down. You can look for the victim who is with an older man or older boyfriend.
Befriending them, hanging out with me, I'll take care of you, I'll give you rides, let me buy you some stuff, and that trusted adult. And so it's like just understanding what it looks like is really that and protecting those young kids, you know.